All right, folks, we're about ready to get started here. A couple little housekeeping things for you now that a few more people have shown up. This is the Air Force and me, so please bear with me. In case of a fire, there's an exit here and then an exit up at the top of the stairs there and just right down here. Please just get out. Okay. We're glad you're here, but we don't want you to become a permanent part of WSU Tech in that way anyway. You have a handout that has a schedule on it. There's, like I said before, there's a QR code, or you can have the web address there for all the power or the presentations that are given today. There's also some supplemental articles and stuff in there. We have a lady down here, Lisa Parson, who stand up and say hi, wave. She didn't know I was going to do this, so she did one of the articles in there on master and template courses. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. Don't worry, I want you clapping for me later, so we're good. Also on there is the Wi-Fi password and username. So if you need to get on our Wi-Fi to do that, please do. Our next speaker, Mr. Robert Beach, he's from Kansas Community College. He contacted me and tried to do 2 or 3 sessions, but I told him, sorry, sir, you're just going to have to do one, but we appreciate you. He's a assistive technology specialist. I get that right, Robert? Okay. From, like I said, Kansas Community College, a great resource for us, and we're very lucky to have him here to discuss how to make Microsoft Word accessible. So if you'll give him a round of applause, we'll get started with his presentation.
Did we miss? On the front that you did?
It's up on top is the mute.
Oh, on the top.
Testing. There we go. I'm alive. Good morning, everybody. So it's kind of funny. I've been down in Wichita so much this year. I'm almost thinking I'm going to rent a house down here somewhere. This is like my 4th trip this spring. But anyway, it's not a bad run, and I'm glad to be here. I'm going to be talking about Microsoft Word. And this PowerPoint, we probably won't get through all of this, not in detail, but I wanted to at least put the information in the handout. So if we don't get to cover it, you can look at it, give you some ideas what to look up and research. And the very last slide will have my contact information. There are also some business cards there in front of where I'll be sitting. So feel free to grab one of those. Contact me. I do telephone tech support. I do email tech support. And I'll do whatever I can to help you out if you have questions on any of this later on. Okay. Oh, great. It's not going to tell me my slide numbers. So if I'm saying something that isn't on the screen, somebody just yell out, wrong slide or something. And just a little housekeeping. I can't see 3 inches past the end of my nose. Actually, I can't even see my nose. But so if you raise your hand, we're all teachers. We get into that habit, raise your hands. It's not going to do you any good. I'm not going to notice you. So feel free. If you have questions, just yell out, get my attention. I tell people you can throw things to get my attention. Just make sure they're soft, if you would, please. Nothing hard. But get my attention. I'd rather have you ask questions as we go so I remember what on earth it was I said. And we can take care of it then while it's fresh in your mind and mine. But if you're not comfortable with doing that, I'll try to have some time at the end for questions as well. Okay? All right, here are the topics we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about tables. We're going to talk about styles and headings, aligning and spacing text boxes, and the accessibility checker, ACT. We're going to try to hit all of that in 50 minutes. All right, so here we go. Slide 3 are rules about tables. And these are the rules we're going to go into detail on, but I just want to list them. Do not use tables for layout design. Insert, do not draw tables. Set the top row as a header row for your table, if it is a header row, in fact. And if you're using a table, it probably should be. Set entire table to not allow rows to break across pages. Use simple tables when at all possible. Add captions to your tables. Ignore the alt text attribute for tables. Okay? So now let's go talk about all those rules. I think I There we go. Now it's talking to me. Good computer. Okay, do not use tables for layout design. Reasons: tables are more difficult to navigate for screen reader users or people who use keyboard navigation. And by the way, blind people aren't the only ones who use keyboard navigation. People who use speech to text, such as Dragon Naturally Speaking, to control their computers because they can't type on the keyboard or use a mouse for whatever reason. They also use their voice commands depend on keyboard navigation to be able to move, and so they also depend on that. Tables do not utilize other features in Word that make editing and navigating so nice. Okay? We'll talk about those as we go. Wow, now it's really talking to me. It's either feast or famine with JAWS, I tell you. Fortunately, we do have a shut up key for JAWS. I know that's not politically correct, but I still say it's the shut up key. So do not use tables. For example, don't use them for layout design. For example, I just run into this recently working with an institution. Somebody had created all these documents and all their titles, section titles and everything. They created a one column, one row table and put the title in there so that they could do like a shading behind the title and put a box around it and have it centered in a thing. Bad design, because it uses an element that is not designed for that. It makes navigating more difficult, and it doesn't use nice features that we'll talk about in a little bit. So instead of doing that, they should have used heading styles, because they can make the heading styles look that exact same way. It's more uniform, and those allow for more features that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Using a one row but multiple column table to create a layout such as a newspaper, where you have all the text down one column, then all text down another column. Word has column feature. It has a column tool that you can use to do that exact same thing without creating a table. And it's more usable, more editable, so it all works better in the long run. So that's what we talk about don't use tables for layout design. If you're using a table to try to make it look pretty, there's better ways to do that. Insert tables. Do not draw tables. I have a student worker that she needed to make a table out of some text that we were working with. And so she spent like an hour and a half trying to draw these lines in this text that was already there, trying to make it line up good and everything. And when she was done, the blind student who was supposed to be using it couldn't read it because it was a drawn table. Screen reading technology, text-to-speech technology won't read tables that are drawn, not accurately. It might read a little bit, but not accurately. So you want to insert the tables instead of draw them. Drawn tables are also much harder to edit and modify later on if you have to go in and add cells or rows or columns or whatever. If you need to adjust sizes, it can be difficult with a drawn table, whereas a inserted table can be done much easier. Okay? Finding the insert. Find out how to insert a table. If you click on and I apologize, on my PowerPoint, there's an error here. I said click on the Insert tab on the Home ribbon. That's a contradiction of terms. It's a Home tab or an Insert tab on the upper ribbon. You want the Insert tab on the upper ribbon. Click that, and then inside that, you'll see some tools. And of course, you can go over to the Table tool, click that, and it's going to open up a whole dialog. It gives you a grid of tables you can choose from, so many rows and so many columns, and you can choose from that grid. Or there's a little menu there that says Insert a Table. There's also an option there for Draw a Table. You want to avoid that one, but use the Insert Table, and you can create your own, tell it how many rows, how many columns you want, whatever. So, but anyway, under the Insert tab on the Insert ribbon, use the Insert Table or select from the grid. That will create an accessible table for you. Set the top row of your table as a header row. Why do you want to do this? It helps screen reading technologies identify what the column is as they move through it. So, technologies such as JAWS and NVDA can better announce the column information as you're moving across the table and know what column you're in, okay? Also, it gives you the nice advantage if your table goes onto more than one page. you can have that header row repeated on the next page so that everybody don't have to keep flipping back to the previous page to see what that column is. It's right there on that page as they go. And you don't have to worry about trying to figure out, okay, where is this table going to break to the next page? Where do I need to type in these headings again? Okay. How to do this? Select the top row of your table. Bring up your context menu by right-clicking or Shift F10. And Ron mentioned something earlier, keyboard commands. They've actually done studies. People who use keyboard commands instead of the rodent are more productive. You also get less wrist strain going back and forth. So I recommend learn the keyboard commands if you're doing a lot of document production. It'll save you time in the long run. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Bring up the context menu, select table properties, and then move to the row tab. And in there is a checkbox that says set as header row. Click that checkbox and click your OK, and you got it done. Real easy stuff. And I'm not taking time to actually bring up Word and show you how to do all this because, like Cliff said, we have so much time, and it's not really meant to be a, quote, demonstration, hands-on training kind of thing. We're talking about the theories of it. If you do want me to demonstrate something, I'm happy to do that. Just holler out, and I'll see what I can do. Okay, slide 8. Set entire table to not allow rows to break across pages. Reasons? How many of you ever created a table and you get to the bottom of one page and half of the information for that row is on that page and half of the information goes to the next page? Frustrating, isn't it? How do you get all that information to go to the next page? Well, if you select the whole table, this makes tables easier to understand and makes editing them easier in the long run. So how do we do this? Select the whole table, bring up your context menu with right-click or Shift F10. Or if you're on a regular keyboard, there's an applications key that you can use. It's right down by your right-hand control key. I like Windows because there's always more than one way to do anything. You have options. Okay. In the select table properties, once you get that context menu up, go to the row tab, and there's a checkbox there that says allow rows to break across pages. By default, it is checked. Shame on you, Microsoft. Uncheck that, and then click your OK button, and you're done. And then if you get to a row, as you're making your table, if the row splits across the page, it'll push the whole row down to the next page. So everything is kept together. Any questions on any of this so far? Yes? When you say split tables, you mean actually splitting a row? Okay. If you go the method you're talking about there, that break is there permanently. So if you edit text above that table, you're going to have the same problem again. You're going to have to go back and resplit that table. If you use this technique that I just showed you, it'll automatically adjust it. So now back to your original question, would screen readers pick that up? I believe they do, yes, because basically they look at it as two separate tables at that point.
Okay, we got another question here. Hang on.
Another question?
And will it keep the same font? If, for example, you are using something like 12 or 14, and it does not extend to the second page, will it maintain that same font?
It will keep, you're right. It will not redesign fonts or resize them or change any of that information. It just simply says, okay, this line is in this row, but this line on the next page is also that same row. Let's push them both down together. It's kind of like the widow orphan tool that keeps a paragraph from having one line on one page and the rest of the paragraph on the next page. Good questions. Anything else?
I think we're good.
Okay. Moving on.
Use simple tables.
Use simple tables when at all possible. And there are several reasons for this. Number one, non-uniform tables can cause problems for screen reading technology or any text-to-speech technology, whether it's JAWS, something for the visually impaired, or somebody with learning disabilities, somebody English as a second language that's using text, having text read to them so that they can comprehend better. Complex tables, non-uniform tables can be very tricky for that. Complex tables, for the most part, they can become totally inaccessible. Even though they look like they would be fine, they can become totally inaccessible because they are complex tables. And when I say complex tables, not just merging and splitting a cell here or there, but actually having whole rows that split into multiple times, or even going into nested tables. So how do you keep this from happening? Keep merging and splitting cells to a minimum. It's okay to do that some, but if you do it the more you do, the more complex it's going to become and the less accessible it's going to become. For example, you may have a table that has 5 columns, and you want the title of the table to span across all 5 columns. So you merge that first row to be one cell across all 5 columns. That's fine. Screen reader technology will not have a problem with that. Okay. Even, for example, a table where it's talking about air travel, 2002 to 2005. So we have several years there, 4 years where we're having air travel. And each year has number of customers and number of flights. So 2 columns for every year. Okay. And then it has the airlines, TWA, I'm dating myself here, down the side. It's okay to split 2002 or merge that cell so that it goes over the number of passengers and number of flights. And then 2003 has 2 columns under it. It's okay to do that because that's header rows, that's at the top, and it won't cause problems for the screen reader per se. Now, the screen readers probably will not be able to grab the information about what row or what column they're in, so it becomes a little more complicated at that point, but at least it will read the text as you arrow through. If you start splitting down in the middle, or if you do nested tables, which my next point there, avoid nested tables, then you're really going to be creating something that is inaccessible for people with disabilities, and you're creating something that anybody is going to have more trouble comprehending. Nested tables become very complex and people have a hard time understanding them. It would be better to rethink your design and see if you can maybe create 2 tables to give the same information and link it. There may be a situation where you absolutely cannot avoid using the nested table, and if so, do a description after the table explaining what it is as best you can. Okay? A nested table is basically where in one of your cells in your table, you create another table. So, see, it even sounds complicated, doesn't it? So they can be very difficult to understand for people who aren't even using assistive technologies. So.
Slide 10. Add.
That should be fine. I've not seen any situations where screen readers have difficulty or any text-to-speech technology has trouble reading a formula inside a table. Any other questions? Okay. Add captions to tables. Reason, and I apologize. Sometimes I say reasons and I have one reason. Other times I say reason and I have several. So I apologize for my inconsistency on that. Chalk it up to not getting it done in a timely manner. All right. Having the caption at the beginning or having a caption on a table helps the screen reader user and anybody else have a better idea what this table is all about. It just summarizes the table, tells what to expect in this table. Also, if you do a caption on it, if you do a caption on a table, it allows for other tools such as the creation of a table of tables or a table of authorities kind of thing to be done, table of images. Those captions can be used to create those tables. And if you're using a very large document that has multiple tables, that can be very useful for research and reference purposes. How do you do this? First of all, you select the table. Then you bring up your context menu with a right click or Shift F10 or the application key. Select Insert Caption and then type in the summary of what you want that to be, the summary of that table. And it doesn't have to be long and detailed unless it needs to be to give the information. And then I always suggest, unless there's a good reason not to, put the caption above the table. Reason being, if I'm reading down through there with my screen reader, I want to hear what the summary of that table is, the information I need to know about that table before I start reading the table. I might get in a table and spend several minutes trying to figure it out, and then get to the end of the table, and there's a caption that tells me what I was trying to figure out. So it's better to have the caption before the table. Okay. Any questions on captions?
Ignore the alt text feature.
Ignore the alt text feature on tables. I know that sounds odd. Why would you ignore it? Number one, it really doesn't provide much information, helpful information. It can if used right. But Microsoft is the only format that actually recognizes the alt text on tables. No other format does that. Not HTML, not PDF, not EPUB, not DAISY. Nothing else recognizes that. Word is the only one, or Microsoft is the only one who did that. But the big deal is even Microsoft realizes it's pointless. They're deprecating it. So it's going away anyway. Next version of Office, from what I understand, will not have that option. So don't even worry about alt texting a table. If you do the caption, that's all you need. Yes. Okay, did you select the table first? Yeah, select the table first. Okay. No problem. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so we're moving on to rules regarding styles and headings. This is one of my favorite topics. So here's the rules. Use styles for structure rather than formatting. Use heading styles for section titles rather than formatting. Keep headings in a logical flow. Okay, now let's go talk about those rules.
13. Use styles for structure rather than simple formatting. Reformatting.
Styles for structure. Styles provide information for the user that formatting does not provide. For example, when I'm using my screen reader technology, I have to make it tell me if something is bold. So I have to move to a word, give a command, and listen through all the font information to see if it says that font is bolded. Whereas if I use a strong style, my screen reader can automatically tell me when I move into a word that's strong. And strong style basically is the same thing as a bold, okay? Styles are easier to modify and edit. You change it once, it changes for the whole document. Styles provide a consistent look to your document. Styles can provide information to text-to-speech technologies that formatting cannot. I think I already said that. Go back over here, did I miss one? Oh yeah, styles provide structure that formatting doesn't, and that structure will go to other formats that formatting may not always go over. I've had situations where people created a really nice document in Word using bolded and italicized text, and they save it to the PDF format or HTML format, and all of a sudden their bold is not always there. And they're like, why didn't it go over? Well, formatting doesn't always translate beautifully like we want it to, okay? So if we use styles, you're much more likely to have all that go over with you.
14. Use styles for structure styles.
Pardon? Yes. Basically, you kind of go through the styles list, open up your styles pane and look at your styles and see what they do. It was interesting to me when I first learned about styles. I'll just tell you the whole little story here. I was actually creating a document. One of the other parts of my life, I'm also an ordained minister. And I'd been in some conversations with some folks about Bible translations, and which can be very interesting if you're in the religious world and you've had any of that discussion. You know, that can get interesting. So anyway, I was writing a document on this, and it was like 66 pages long and multiple sections. And so I was going down through there, and everywhere there was a main section, I was selecting it, click bold, click center, click the font size to increase the font, change the font to a different font, change the color. I was doing all of this for every single section heading. And then for subsections, I was doing the same kind of thing, just using different formatting. It got to, of course, I was working on this over a period of time. I realized I got down to like page 30 something, and I wasn't being consistent with my styles, with my formatting. And so I had to go back and change all of that again, because that's what we tend to do. We select the title, we click bold, we click center, we click underline, whatever we want to add to it. We do all that clicking. We have to do that every time there's a title. And I found out about styles. And I went back and redid all that document, reformatted everything. I applied styles. And then I realized, oh, wait, these styles don't look like I want them to look. I just modified it once. All the heading 1 styles went to the same look. Then I modified heading 2. All of the heading 2s went to the same look. I didn't have to go redo each one in the document. And when you're talking a 66-page document with multiple sections, that's a big deal. But when I learned about it, the lady was telling me some of the things. So strong is equivalent to your bold. And if you don't like the way it looks, you can modify it so that it does look just like your bold. Emphasis, I believe, is the one that looks like your italicized. So you can apply an emphasis or a strong, or you can create your own style. If you know you're going to be using a lot of sections that have bolded and italicized word, you can create a new style and call it whatever you want to. Make it look the way you want to. Okay? So basically just kind of go through and look at the attributes of them, and it will show you examples. If you click in style, it'll show you what that will look like. Okay? Any other questions on that before I ramble on? Okay. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Did I already?
Slide 15. Keep headings in a logical flow. Example, bold heading 1 is the main section. Heading 2 should be subsections of heading 1. Heading 3 should be subsections of heading.
Go back to this
Slide
one.
14. Slide 14. Use styles for structure added 4.
Okay, so the question is, how do I do styles as opposed to all that selecting and clicking and all that? Basically, there are 2 places. So select your home tab on your upper ribbon. In the styles group, you have 2 buttons. The first button will give you a simple basic styles list. The second button will open up a styles pane that gives you full control over your styles. And this is where I like to work because I'm a control freak and I want my control. I want to be able to do what I want to do with it and have it do what I tell it to do. And so the styles pane is where you can do that. You can modify any of your styles to look different than what they do. You can create new styles. You can delete styles that you don't think you want. I don't really recommend that. But you can have all kinds of fun with styles in the styles pane. Okay? Some of the styles are called attribute styles, and they will generally have, I believe it's a little A in front of them, and that would be like your strong, emphasis, those types of styles, and they apply to individual characters. So if you're going to use an attribute style, you do have to select the text that you want to use. Excuse me. Other styles are what we call paragraph styles. You don't have to select the text. You just click in the paragraph you want, click the style, and it applies to the whole paragraph. Headings, block text, titles, those styles are paragraph level styles. Okay? And then I have to apologize. My cyber dog ate my slides. So I have a couple of slides missing.
Slide 15.
I'll go ahead and go to slide 15. But I wanted to talk about why using headings is so important. If you mark something as a heading 1 or a heading 2 or a heading 3, it will actually give you control of the document, give you navigation capabilities, give you features that you don't get when you just select and click bold and underline and center and all that. So if I have marked up things in my document as heading 1 and I turn on my navigation pane in Microsoft Word, all of those heading 1s are listed in that navigation pane. So no matter where I'm at in the document, I can go over and click any of those headings in that navigation pane and be taken to that point in the document immediately. So that's handy for everybody. How many of you ever see a 1 or 2 page syllabus anymore? Back in the good old days when I was a student, my classes, we had 1 or 2 page syllabi. But now we're seeing syllabi that are 20, 30 pages long. I had a student bring in a syllabus, I believe it was last fall, 72 pages long. How many of you think a student's going to bother looking through that whole syllabus to find what they're looking for? Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, you know. But if the instructor had used, and they didn't, if they had used heading styles in that document, that student could have simply said, oh, there's the grading policy, click, and I'm there. Oh, there's the attendance policy, click, I'm there. And the policy this student really needed to know was about missed test. Click, I'm there. The policy was in the syllabus, but who's going to sit there and scroll through a 72-page document trying to find that information? But by having those heading styles, all those sections of that marked up as a heading 1 or heading 2, whatever they needed to be, that would show up in the navigation pane. They could have clicked it and been right to it. Also, those heading styles will allow me to create an automatic linked table of contents. And so I can go to the top of that document, find the section I want to read, control click it with the mouse, and zoom away to that part of the document I go. Screen readers, using JAWS, I can bring up my headings list and see all the headings, see the outline of the document right there, and go to whatever part of the document I want to. So headings are an awesome, awesome tool to use in your documents. And again, you can change them, modify them, make them look the way they need to look. All right, headings. Keep headings in a logical flow. Just like outlining a term paper, you have your main point, and under that you have subpoints. So you have Roman numeral I, introduction, A, introduction to this, B, introduction to that. Under B, you may have 1, 2, 3. So it's a staggered or a stepped table of contents or outline kind of thing. Headings use that same philosophy. So my heading 1, that's my main sections. So chapter 1 maybe will be a heading 1. 1.1 will be a heading 2. 1.1.1 will be a heading 3. And that keeps that logical flow going. It just simply makes the flow more understandable. Am I making sense? Okay. So it provides a logical flow to the document. It makes it easy to navigate. It makes it easy to create your linked table of contents. All of that structure goes with if you save out to other formats. And here's what a lot of people have found really cool. If you switch to the outline view in your document, you can drag a heading 1 to a new part of the document, and all of the subheadings, all of the paragraphs that go with that heading 1 move with it. So you don't have to sit there and select all down through a couple of pages of information, cut, copy, paste, and move. You can simply drag and drop on the heading styles using the outline view. Real time saver. Real finger saver too if you're trying to click through the mouse that far, holding down or scroll through a mouse, trying to hold down the button and scroll and all that. It can get interesting. So by using those heading styles and keeping them in a logical flow, you can more quickly and easily edit your document.
Slide 16. Headings allow for navigation via navigation.
Slide 16, headings allow for navigation via the navigation pane, and I've already talked about that. And that's helpful for anybody. You do not have to be an assistive technology user. It can be helpful for anyone. Let's see, what's my other? Oh yeah, okay. So I've already kind of talked about those points. Let me tell you,
Slide 17.
how do you turn on the navigation pane? Click the View tab on your upper ribbon, and in the Show group, there's a checkbox for navigation pane. When you check that, it's going to turn on your navigation pane, and you'll see all your headings. If your document has any headings in it, they'll all list up there. Okay? Getting close. We may do better on this than I thought we were going to do.
Slide 18. Headings allow for the
Headings allow for the quick and accurate, notice I say accurate, creation of a linked table of contents. In other words, you don't have to go find, okay, where is that? Okay, that starts on 37. Go back up and put that in your table of contents. That section starts on page 37. Then go down and find where the next one starts, and then go back up to your table of contents. You just simply create a linked table of contents automatically, and it will automatically tell the table of contents what page you're in, what page that starts on, that particular item. So it's very, very nice, and it is accurate. If you edit the document and things move around, all you have to do is right-click on the table of contents, tell it to update, and it'll update and get all the new page numbers where they belong.
Robert, quick question.
Yes.
If you change the Word document into PDF, do the links still come over?
Good question. Yes, a linked table of contents created with the headings flows over to the PDF document. Okay. Yes. No, and that's the beauty of the headings or the styles, using styles. You can modify the style, and the screen reader is still going to get the information. This is a heading 1, so a new section is starting. This is heading 2, so we're moving to a new subsection. All that information is still relayed to the screen reader user. So no, nothing wrong with that at all. That's the beauty of styles. You can modify them to look the way you need them to look, but the information to the assistive technologies is the same. And that structure goes if you transfer to other document formats as well. Okay, so how do you create a linked table of contents? Go to your References tab on the upper ribbon, and there's the table of contents option right there. Click it and choose the type of table of contents you want. By default, it gives you levels 1, 2, and 3, headings 1, 2, and 3, and those are tabbed in. So heading 1s will be at the margin, heading 2s will be tabbed in under that, heading 3s will be tabbed in under those, and it gives you the dot leaders for the page numbers. That's the default. You can modify that. I don't always do the little heading 2 and 3s in my table of contents. I generally just do a heading 1s, but depending on the size of the document and how big the sections are. So you can modify it to look the way you want it to do, but the cool thing is it's there, and it's linked, and it's accurate. Okay.
Slide 20. Rules for page breaks. Breaks.
Rules for page breaks. Okay. Did I miss one? Oh, I already talked about that. Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, slide 20. I'm on track, really I am. The rules for page breaks. And this is something I see people do all the time. In fact, my administrative assistant and I just had a big talk about this yesterday. You say, okay, I'm going to start some more information here, but it's not all going to fit on this page, so I'm going to enter down until I get to the next page. Bad formatting. Bad design. Use the page break command instead because it's going to be less confusing. And I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. I'm on the next slide, so there we go.
Slide 21. Use the page break. Break.
So use the page break command, which is Control-Enter, and that will force that information or force you go to the next page. If you go back and edit page 1 and you add more information in, it isn't going to change page 2. By doing the enter, and you move down so that you're starting on page 2 now, then you go back and you add another 2 or 3 lines on page 1. Now your start of page 2 is 2 or 3 lines down on the page. So you got to go back and delete those out. If you use the page break, it automatically adjusts that you don't have to worry about it. Okay? So how to do this? Simple. Just press Control-Enter where you want the new page to begin, or you can also find the page break command on the home ribbon. I think it is. Layout ribbon, sorry. Thank you. I found it just about the time you said that. Yeah, it's on the layout ribbon. I don't ever use that. I just use Control-Enter, so I have to always go look to find that. All right, any questions on page breaking? If you want more space between paragraphs, instead of enter to add that space in, use the paragraph controls. So select the text that you want to have more space and go up and increase your paragraph in spacing through the tools that are there for that. If you use the enter key to space things out, screen reader users, okay, I can't see that document on the screen. So I go down and I arrow down as I'm reading and it says blank, blank, blank. Okay, by the third blank, I'm thinking, okay, I must be at the end of the document. But actually there's a whole another section of that document coming. It's just way down. So that can be really misleading. Also, when you try to transfer to other formats or if you modify, it's going to throw things off. So it's better to use the paragraph things. How do you do that? Select the section like I was saying before. Select the section you want to adjust the size on. Select the Home tab on the upper ribbon. Select the paragraph group. In the paragraph group, either the last button, which says line and paragraph spacing. I'll get it right in a minute. Or the very last button, which actually doesn't say anything, is what I'm told. It's just a button there, and you have to hover your mouse over to see what it is. It's actually the whole paragraph dialogue. If you click that, it brings up the whole thing. And again, I'm a control freak, so that's one I usually use because I want to have all the control of my paragraph. And you can increase your spacing before and spacing after to get more space between your paragraphs. Any questions? Okay.
Slide 23, aligning text rule, use tab, stop, stops.
Aligning text. Now we're talking about horizontal alignment as opposed to vertical alignment. Use tab stops rather than multiple spaces or tabs to align things. If information is in a tabular format, use a table. Because a lot of times that's what people are trying to do when they're doing the space, 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 or tab, tab, tab. They're trying to line things up in columns or in a table, kind of a look. And it's better to use either the columns tool or use the table to do that. Reasoning, if you do the space, 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 or tab, 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 and then you adjust to other formats, change your font size, what have you, everything's going to go wonky on you. And I see a lot of times people, they're like in the test, question the one at the margin, and the space, space, space in, and start their question. Well, they get to the end of the line, and it wraps. Well, then they go to the first of that second line, space, 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 till they line it up. Then when you convert to other formats, especially Braille, man, that looks weird. And it wastes a lot of space. So it's really not a good design. So, did I go to 24?
Slide 24, aligning.
So how do I align? How is the best way to do that? Select the text you want to align. Click the Home tab on the upper ribbon. Choose the paragraph button, the last one in that paragraph group. And then select in the indents and spacing, click on the tab option and adjust your tabs there. Set up your tabs. So if you needed to space in 2 inches instead of 1.5 inches, set it to 2, and everything will line up for you without having to do all the multiple spaces. Any questions? Yes? Okay, thanks.
Good morning.
There you go.
So you said to use the tab stops. If the original tabs are okay where they're at and you're not having to readjust things, is it okay to use the ones that are set up as defaults?
Yes, as long as you're not, say for example, if you want your information to be 3 inches in and the original tab stops are at every 1/2 inch, you're going to have to tab, 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 tab. You're using that multiple tab situation, and that's where the problem comes in when you try to convert to other formats or for screen reader users. So for that section, set your first tab stop at 3 inches. So you
Okay.
just tab once and everything
But
goes
if
there.
you can still have multiple tabs if you're doing like, oh, you said put it into a table if you're going to do it that way. Okay. All right.
Right. So if you're trying to line up, week 1, week 2, week 3, and under that is the grades for each item, something of that nature, don't tab those, don't do tab, 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 space, space, space to line those up. Create a table for that kind of information. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Let's see. I went to table 25 or slide 25, I think.
Slide 25.
Yeah.
Slide 25, avoid using.
Okay. Text boxes. The question that came up earlier about text boxes. The only thing I can say about text boxes, don't use them. That's the rule. Don't use them because they are not accessible. You cannot make a text box accessible at this point in time. Yes, some text-to-speech technologies have been able to make them a little bit accessible, but it's not reliable, and not all technologies can do that. So that information is not accessible to somebody using text-to-speech technologies. Also, most formats, if you transfer from, say, Word with the text box to PDF, you're probably going to lose it. If you transfer from Word to HTML, you're going to lose that text box. So you don't want to use text boxes. If you want that certain type of an effect, use a style. Create a style to give you that effect. For example, if you want your text box to be over to the left and have a black border around it, gray shading behind it, create a style, a paragraph style that has that information. It's right, align it, have the indents set the way you want them, so the text box starts, 4 inches over into the document. Have the gray shading behind it. You can put a border around it. You can do all that with a style, and then it's totally accessible. You got the look you want, and everything's great. Talking about look, I think sometimes people get so excited about the look of things, they forget about the practicality. I was working at a church one time setting up a sound system for them, and the pastor said, I want a monitor here, and I want a monitor, and I want a microphone here, all of this at the pulpit, and I want monitors there. And I said, okay, so we set it up, and he came back in, looked, well, we had wires running to them. We had them tucked in at the edges of steps and stuff, and he goes, I don't want all these wires. That looks ugly. I said, well, do you have about $20,000 to go sink in on wireless technology? No. I said, then you got to have wires, or you don't get your equipment where you want it. So what's more important to you, the way it looks or the way it works? And so he decided he probably wanted the wires there. And he was able to come up with some things to kind of decorate the wires so they didn't look so bad. Don't get so wrapped up in the look of your document that you lose the practicality of it. Like Ron earlier was talking about image overload. Our publishers are getting so crazy with the way they do pages in their textbooks. I have so many students complain to me about the way textbooks are laid out. I got a text box over here. I got a sidebar over here. I've got this over here. I got this over here. They don't even know what order they should read a page in. It's so confusing to them. And I think we can get the same thing going on by using these text boxes and stuff. We think it makes it pretty, but it sometimes makes it less functional, and especially for people with disabilities. So keep that in mind. Not saying you can't have a pretty document, but do it correctly and keep the purpose of the document in mind more than the look of the document. Okay? Screen readers, JAWS can read the comment text in a Word document pretty well. NVDA can read it pretty well. So those are actually very accessible to screen reading technologies now. Didn't used to be, but they are now. So yes, inserting comments is good. But for example, if a student turns in a paper to you and you do your grading by adding comments in, which is what I do, just let the student know that I put my comments in as comments so they'll know to use that tool in their screen reader to access them. Yep. Okay.
Slide 26. Use the accessibility checker.
Accessibility checker tool. This is a really neat tool, came out in Office 2013. It automatically looks at your document and tells you if there are some issues to be concerned about, okay? It's an automatic checker. So there could be some false positives and false negatives. There could be some errors. It may miss some things. So it still doesn't replace you actually looking at your document and making sure you've done what you need to do, but it's a good way to catch, oops, there is an image there I forgot to get alt text on. How did that happen? Kind of thing. Or, oh, wait a minute, I thought that'd be okay to do that way. I guess it isn't, so I'll do it differently. So it will do those kinds of things. How do you launch the accessibility checker? If you go to the review tab, it's right there, basically. I believe is it next to spell check? I can't remember now, but it's right there on that ribbon, and it just says check for accessibility. So that's one place you can find it. You can also find it if you click on File. Under the Info tab there, you can go over to Check, and when you click that, it brings down a menu. You can check for accessibility and check for compatibility. So it will bring those two things down for you. You can also add that to your quick access toolbar, which I know a lot of people do that. just to make it quick and easy to get to.
Slide 27. What the messages mean.
Yes. You know what? I got that the other day too, and I meant to look that up and see exactly what that was saying. But I believe what that's meaning is like an image. You told it to do, instead of doing an inline image, you told it to do something else. And inline images, screen reading technology can miss those if they're not inline images. Yeah, some of that could be what's causing that. But I believe wrapping the text around the image is okay. Let me check on that. Did you get one of my business cards? Okay. Get one of my business cards, and see, I'm out all next week. So the first week of July, email me if you haven't figured that out. You know, if you haven't got to find the information, email me and remind me, rattle my cage, so I can look that up for you and get that checked out. Okay. Any other questions on that? That's going to depend on how you set up the Excel worksheet. But generally speaking, if it's just a straightforward Word worksheet, probably it's going to paste over as a table into Excel just fine. That's the experience I've had. Others' mileage may vary, but I've not had any problems doing that. I haven't done it very often, but I've done it a few times, and it usually comes over just fine. Okay. What the messages mean when you run the accessibility checker, it could be an error. If it's an error, that means it's definitely a problem and you need to fix it. Okay? Or it's going to cause problems either when you convert out to other formats, or it's going to cause problems for your students with disabilities. Warnings mean this could be a problem. You may want to fix this. You probably really should fix it, but it's not as definite a problem as warning or as errors. Errors and warnings. Then you also have tips, which is, you know, your document could be a little bit better if you do this. Okay? So those are what those error messages mean when you run the accessibility checker. And it's a pretty neat tool because what it'll do when it brings up the list of errors and warnings, all you have to do is click that item and it'll take you to that point in the document. And it'll also give you information about what you need to do to fix it. So it doesn't just say, it's not like the spell checker in Microsoft Word, which kind of frustrates me. It says, this is a, well, it does better now, I have to admit. This is an error. Here's your list of words. Which one do you want? Well, what do these words mean? And now Word is actually including some definitions with some of the words in those, which is cool. Assistive technologies have been doing that for a long time. I'm glad Word finally caught up. But, you know, it's nice to have the information there about what you need to do to fix it or why it's a problem. Okay? Yeah. Resources. Here's a couple of resources. Karen McCall at Carlin Communications. She's actually up in Canada. We call her the queen of accessible PDFs. And I jokingly tell people I get to run around with royalty and deity because I know the queen of accessible PDFs and the goddess of alt formats. So, and I said that at a conference one time when I was presenting with the goddess of alt formats, and they asked me, what's your place? I said, I'm the court jester. So, but Karen's website has a lot of good information about accessible PDFs and accessible Word documents and Excel documents and PowerPoint, all of that. I recommend going to her website and looking at stuff. And she has written books that you can purchase, especially on PDFs. I strongly recommend her accessible PDF books if you're into that. I found for me, it's much easier if I create a good, solid, accessible Word document and then save it as a PDF. It's easier for me going that route. But some people just like to work in Adobe, and so there you go. All right, and then, of course, Microsoft support. Their website is good, and you can get a hold of them for help. There's my contact information. If you need confused further, I'll be happy to do that. So, but like I said, I will do phone support and email support as needed if I can. If I don't know the answer, I probably can refer you to somebody who does. Okay? And that's it. We did make it.
selection. Edit. Alt F4.
Okay.